Hello, once again, and welcome back to the weird library of AP Strange. It is me, AP Strange, and my wiggly little goblin Bernie, who has no concept of personal space, here to share some more weird books with you. And I've been feeling a little under the weather, so it's taken me a little longer to get one out this week than usual, but that's okay. I may not always get one out every week, but I do enjoy doing it, and I have a lot of weird books, and I usually do about three per episode, and I have another three for you today. And do you want to say hi? Do you want to say hi to the people, Bernie? Say hi to your adoring public. Here you go. Say hello. Hello. There we go. Uh, Anytime I start talking, he wants to know what's going on, and then he loses interest after a while. So, um, yes, feeling a little under the weather today. In fact, this is the second attempt at recording this video because I messed up and didn't adequately test the sound before, and I have a recording with no sound on it, which isn't ideal when I spend most of the video just talking. But uh, so, for your benefit, I'm doing it again. This is take two of this edition of selections from the Weird Library. And first up in uh, this week's selections is a coffee table book. At least I'm calling it that because when I had a coffee table in my living room, this was sitting on it for a good couple of years. I no longer have a coffee table. I instead have an ottoman on which my computer is currently placed. I don't know that you'd necessarily call this a coffee table book, but it did work that way for me. It's In Advance of the Landing, Folk Concepts of Outer Space by Douglas Curran. This was originally published in the 80s, from what I could tell. Douglas Curran was a photographer. He currently is a photographer. Still, he's around, and he would go to places like Africa or talk to people in different cultural groups and belief systems and take photos and write about them. And this one focuses on 7 years work in people around UFOs. And I think, um, regardless of what you think about the UFO subject and the reality of UFOs or what you think they are, like the culture around them is fascinating, and the stories. I always think the stories are more important, and the people around it are more important um, to learn from. It's a fascinating case study, regardless of where your beliefs lie on the spectrum of quote unquote woo. Um, and just for the pictures alone, this book is phenomenal. So you have this picture of one of my favorite contactee type people in the universe who had the best car. That's Ruth Norman, otherwise known as Uriel from the Unarius Academy of Arts and Sciences. Um, this book has a little bit of everything. Some of it is contactees, conferences, witnesses, artists. This is hard to do. So, and it's kind of presented uncritically. He's not making fun of people, which is nice. Oh, here we have John Shepard. He was the subject of a documentary called "John Was Trying to Talk to Aliens." He would do a radio show for the UFOs from his grandparents' home in Michigan. Uh, and he's still around. He was in that documentary. Um, anyway, a really great book. I think anybody with an interest in UFOs needs a copy of this laying around. Here's another some sculptures, including a fiberglass replica of aliens made by Betty Andreasen Luca, who passed away a couple of years ago. And she was the subject of some of Raymond Fowler's books about the abduction experience. So yeah, this has got a little bit of everything up into that era. So we're talking late 70s into the 80s. And yeah, as I already said, it's an indispensable book to just have around, even if you just want to flip through the pictures and see just to see the cool pictures of various flying saucers and artistic renderings of alien life, and kind of get a feel for the types of people that dedicate their lives to flying saucers and UFOs and ufology. So that's In Advance of the Landing: Folk Concepts of Outer Space by Douglas Curran. Well worth well worth the bucks you might spend on it. And finding a used copy is really not hard. It was a popular enough book. There's plenty to be found on the interwebs. So moving along to the second book, it's actually a little easier because I had a practice run through, but we'll see. It actually might come out worse. I'll never know because I can't listen to the first one. Um, the second one I have is called The Masters Revealed, Madame Blavatsky and the Myth of the Great White Lodge. And this is a really cool book by K. Paul Johnson. Um, this one does kind of require, well, not kind of, I'm going to say it does require some background on who Helena Petrovna Blavatsky was and her life and her work, because you'll be lost without a little bit of background on it. He's not giving you that whole story in this book. There's plenty of biographies about her already out there. I would recommend Gary Lockman's biography on her. I remember when I first read it, I was really just trying to get a good picture of who Blavatsky is, because um, a lot of people just kind of write her off with very shorthand descriptions and never flattering ones. And Lockman seems to kind of lean the other way. He seems very sympathetic. And that made me nervous reading it the first time, because I'm like, well, wait a minute. maybe maybe he's being a little too generous with her, but he is balanced. He balances it, and he has some degree of sympathy for the belief structures, because he is himself a magician, and uh, a scholar of mysticism, as it were. So uh, your mileage may vary, as they say. There are several biographies. A lot of them are a lot less charitable than Lockman's. So whichever one you want to read, whatever. If you want, I'm just saying you need some background, because this book presumes that you already know the basic story of Blavatsky and her life, and how the Theosophical Society came to be, and that this concerns itself specifically with the concept of the Masters, the Great White Brotherhood, the lodge from which all of these teachers from the East who had camps in Tibet gave their imparted their knowledge to Blavatsky, which informed her writings, particularly that of the Secret Doctrine and the underpinnings of the cosmology of Theosophy, as it were. Um, and along the way, you're meeting a lot of really interesting characters. Um, this book kind of reminded me, in a way, of the Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events, a children's book series that I watched the TV show of with my son when he was younger, because it's just like wild characters all over, from all different parts of the world. And but the way this book presents it is that instead of going with the Time Warren argument that there were no masters and Blavatsky made it all up, and anybody else that said they saw them or whatever was either fooled by her or in on it, and trying to promote this idea for whatever reason, um, or or if or buying into it completely and thinking that yes, there is this like ascended master brotherhood somewhere in the ether. Now, during her time, she never claimed that they were incorporeal spirits. It's not like channeling. It's not the same thing as spiritualism or seances. She always said they were real flesh and blood men, um, and she used the term men. Uh, I don't know. Some of them might have been women. Can't think of any. But we're talking about characters like Kut Humi, Moria, Master Hilarion. These are all different masters that she met and learned from, according to her, and that other people also did. General Olcott, Colonel Olcott, rather. I just, for some reason, in my stupefied my haze here, uh, gave him a promotion. No, Colonel Henry S. Olcott claimed to have encountered them. AP Sennett popularized the ideas around them, and his accounts of the masters in books like The Occult World and the Mahatma Letters are a lot of what really helped to make people disbelieve in the masters. Um, the point is that the idea of the ascended masters as like spiritual beings that exist somewhere in another plane of existence didn't really come around until after Blavatsky was gone, after she was dead, and other people took it over. Um, During her time, she said there were flesh and blood people, real people that she learned from. Um, she didn't, and a lot of people say, well, she never went to Tibet, and there are no masters in Tibet that she would have learned these things from. She never claimed they were from Tibet. She said they were all over the world, and they tend to camp out near Tibet. Um, so, without getting too bogged down in trying to dispel specific misconceptions about her claims versus what people say she was lying about, um, this book really does present a really cool alternative idea that apparently a lot of people had never thought of before, which is that there really were people that she learned from in a variety of different places in the world and different stations in life that she kind of sometimes would um, take little pieces of and stick them together to make this fictional master. Or some of them are one-to-one correlations. This mystical master is this actual historical personage. And in a lot of cases, they were political dissidents, or they were doing their mystical stuff illegally. So you would kind of need to protect their livelihood and their safety by not naming them personally. So it makes a lot of sense. And for a very specific kind of occult nerd in a very specific niche of 19th century mysticism, this is a really cool read. So it's not one I can recommend to anybody and everybody, but if you are can really on if you really want to kind of get a fuller picture of who Blavatsky was and see a really interesting interpretation of the masters and already have the basic background on her, whichever source you get that from, interesting read, very interesting book, and I can heartily recommend it to you if you have those that background fulfilled already. um, so the last book today that I'm going to share is a little easier on me. I still have a lot to say about it because it's a wild and fun read. This one is Jadoo by John Keel. So this is a nice hardcover first edition. It's in great shape. The only thing that could possibly make it better is if it was signed. It is not. But the story behind getting this book is pretty wild. I had a paperback copy for years and it was in really rough shape. And I have meant from time to time to do a little disclaimer on here about paperbacks. With your old paperbacks, sometimes sometimes you just can't even read them because they'll fall apart. They will break. The binding will snap and the book will just snap in half. So these older paperbacks weren't meant to last 50, 60 years. So the copy I had was only from maybe the 80s or the 90s, but still it was in rough shape. It was beaten up. And I thought, if I take this on vacation to read it with me, it may fall apart, either just from being in a bag on the way there or just from trying to read it at a campsite. Um, so I was worried about it. And then the first night I was camping, I had a dream that I was chasing around poisonous snakes. And I woke up the next morning and started reading Jadoo. And the very first chapter in the book is called The City of Snakes. And it's about capturing and and collecting poisonous snakes. Um, Later, I caught wind of the existence of a mummy in Maine near where I was staying at a little wacky roadside location called Perry's Nut House, and made plans to go up there and look at it. And the next chapter that I got to after I learned this was a book in here about some unscrupulous people creating mummies for sale. Um, and so weird synchronicities. And then I went to the only small independent bookstore that I could find. There were very few used bookstores in that part of Maine where I was. Had a very small selection of weird books, and one of them was this beautiful hardcover copy of Jadoo. And so that was kind of amazing. It was an amazing little journey. And then I get to read about John Keel's amazing little journey. This is written about the time that Keel had been in the army, so recently discharged from the army after 4 years. He's in his early 20s, and there's a picture of him on the back, and this gives you a little bit of perspective. Here's a young John Keel. So, like, imagine this. He's like 22, 24, somewhere around there, skinny kid, like running around Egypt and North Africa and the Middle East and up into like India and toward Tibet, um, in search of black magic and folklore and mysticism, and all written in the style of men's adventure magazines from the time. And that's the kind of thing he would write for. And I couldn't probably should have done this after the first time I tried to record it, and I failed to. But because I don't have the titles, but I think one of them was like Saga. There were a lot of magazines that just printed like adventure stories, like explorers and encounters with wild animals and you know, like manly men stuff. So that's kind of what he was after, and he's in these parts of the world looking at their traditions. Um, Specifically, he's looking for the source of the Indian rope trick. He's trying to figure out how that trick is done, and he gets an explanation for it and figures out that he can do a performance of the Indian rope trick, and he basically puts together a big press release for it. He promotes it, and he has everybody come out, and then the whole thing fails miserably. So it's a funny little story that happens in here about him attempting the Indian rope trick and embarrassing himself in front of journalists from all over. Um, there's a clipping in here about it as well. I was trying to find that. I had it last time. Um, Now, given the time period this was written and the audience it was written for, and John Keel's age at the time, um, and you know the various cultures that he's interacting with. All right, here's that clipping: the rope trick a la Keel, and it didn't work. You would think I picked this up thinking, okay, well, you know, this is going to be problematic. I'm just going to have to accept that going into it. There's going to be some really off-color stuff and not stuff we would say nowadays in here. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that that really wasn't so much the case. It's actually not bad. Like I'm not really finding too much to argue with in here, and you know, expecting like a book. This came out in, let's see, can actually find out exactly when it came out since I don't prepare very much beforehand when I do these. 1957. Yeah, so this is 1957. This book came out. For a book in 1957 about traveling in all these places, not bad. I'd say it's not bad at all for as far as its depictions of people and things and language and stuff like that. Now, at the very end of this book, one of the final chapters, he's literally chasing the abominable snowman around. Um, he gets to this legend of it, and he's like trying to find it, and all the people in the area near Tibet where he is are uh, you know, are scared and telling him not to, and he's after this abominable snowman. And this is 1957. I mean, this is the beginnings of this is before like Bigfoot was a known thing. Um, and after this, he tries to go to Singapore, and that doesn't really work out. So the final chapter is really just kind of him like wondering what's next for him. He doesn't know. Like the world is his oyster. Everything is wide open to him, and he's not sure where to go from here. And I think it's just this really cool time capsule moment where he had just, I mean, he had just chased around an abominable snowman. Like, how cool is that, right? And of course that's the trajectory that John Keel was going to stay on. He was going to go hunt monsters, he was going to go look for UFOs, he was going to interview people, and he was going to continue thinking about phantoms and demons from every corner of time and space for the rest of his career. um, and you know, Mothmen and other kinds of monsters, Men in Black. um, and this is just kind of where it all starts, is his travels around the world, um, doing magic tricks for the locals everywhere he goes, um, and protecting himself. Only his only method of self-defense was a gas gun. I have no idea how this works. I don't know what it is. If somebody knows, tell me. He has apparently a gun loaded with knockout gas, and anytime he got into any kind of trouble, he could shoot knockout gas at his attackers. So I don't know how that works if you don't yourself have a gas mask, but um, I don't know. I'm not going to question it. I'm not going to question it too hard because it is an entertaining read. I like Jadoo, and it's really fun to think about. And it really, the difference between the paperback and the hardcover again is this photo, which blows my mind. Like this skinny American kid with a pocket full of cheesy dime store magic tricks and a gas gun um, running around Egypt and India and into Tibet and trying to go to Singapore and all these other places. it's it's wild. So yeah, so that's gonna do it today. I think this second try at the video is even better. So maybe it's for the best that that first one didn't work. And Bernie hung out the whole time. He's been a good boy. Look at this boy. Look at him and his stupid little face. Look at him. Oh boy. Yeah. So if you're new to this channel, go check out the other videos I have. I've covered a whole lot of books so far, and I'm just going to keep doing it. And I have so many books around here. I may not be able to get one every week, but so far I have. And it's been a lot of fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you. Also, on this very channel now is my podcast, The AP Strange Show. There's a separate playlist for it, and you can find past episodes. At the time of this recording, the most recent one is about RoboCop 3, and I'm talking to my good friend Black Wolf John Oates. Tomorrow, as of the time of this recording, there's going to be one with 1960s rock stars and mind control and conspiracies and a whole lot of baloney. And that'll be a fun one to tune into. I anticipate it angering some people and thrilling others. And either way, I hope people are entertained in some way or fashion. If you don't want to watch this stuff on YouTube, you can also find the AP Strange Show on Apple, Spotify, any of those other places you get podcasts. So until we meet again, this has been AP Strange and Bernie with selections from the Weird Library. We will see you next time.